The Board of Trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District is called to order at 6:30 p.m. This is the board workshop being held on September 15th, 2020. We have a quorum with all board members present, with the exception of Mr. Hunt and Ms. Williams. We will review the agenda items from the regular board meeting being held on September 17th, 2020. I did want to just remind those that are here to make public comments that will occur at the end of the board workshop. So Dr. Randall.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First item, we ask that the Board of Trustees authorize the superintendent to submit a class waiver to the Texas Education Agency.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
With us following the COVID guidelines as far as distancing and everything, would it make sense to request this waiver at this time? Because we're asking to put more students into a classroom, is that correct?
If you look at the waiver sheet, there's actually only two physical classrooms that are impacted. The majority of our waivers are at virtual, and the two physical classrooms that are impacted, we're actually in the process of. One teacher will be starting Monday, and the other one, they're checking references tonight, so we're hoping to have them on board. But the rest are for the actual virtual classrooms. The waivers are because the virtual classrooms are larger than 22 to 1.
And it also provides us some flexibility to be able to handle classes, because we're a fast growth school district and we have kids registering all the time. And we will take and continue to make adjustments in the classroom as far as social distancing. We're looking at barriers and those types of things to respond to COVID.
That was my question too, because I thought it was only adults, and I didn't know if it was we're trying to find teachers.
One we've completed, we're waiting on the fingerprint process to be complete, I believe, and we'll start Monday, and the other one we're processing the recommendation. So we should be pretty quick on those two, on that one as well.
What would happen if the virtual students come back in the 9 weeks, if more of them decide to come back to the schools? I'm concerned that you may have a class of 23, 26.
If we need to, we can shift a virtual teacher back into the on-campus setting as well to help alleviate that. Again, as Dr. Randall mentioned, this gives us some flexibility because we can let those virtual classes get a little larger so that we can keep our on-campus a little smaller.
Okay, so the classes are larger now?
Mm-hmm. That's why we're requesting the waiver, because they're
So they
larger
want the virtual ones to be, we have to request a waiver even for the virtual
we are
classes.
requesting those, yes.
The initial student ratio right now, student to teacher in the elementaries, what is that?
I do not have an overall district ratio, do you? No, we have not calculated an overall ratio.
What has it been the year before we got into all this?
Without doing some homework, Ms. Kaminsky,
No?
I couldn't
Okay,
give you an answer.
okay.
I can look into that, though.
Okay, thank you.
The next item on the agenda, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve submission of an asynchronous learning plan designed to support the district's virtual learners throughout the 2020-2021 school year, and we have a presentation for the board. And this is Katie Marchetta, by the way, if you don't remember.
Good evening, Madam Vice President, board members, Dr. Randall. I'm excited to be here tonight to share our draft of our asynchronous plan submission for TEA. And so just a little bit of background information before I dig into the plan. First of all, TEA is asking that we create an asynchronous learning plan that defines how we're handling asynchronous instruction. Back in July, we had to give TEA notice that we intended to do asynchronous instruction. That initial notice was approved. Then they released the template, which is what we filled in for the report for the state. And that template, this final draft of our plan, is due by October 1st. And so the plan addresses some key attestations. So if you should have a booklet that looks something like this in front of you. The first couple of pages are the attestations, just assurances that we're doing what the state is requiring. And then there's a series of open-ended questions. And I'm just gonna do my best to kind of hit the high points of those open-ended questions so you have an understanding of what our plan is. It covers 4 key areas, starting with instructional schedules, then material design, student progress, and finally our implementation plan. Instructional schedules, first of all, there's 2 parts in the rubric that TEA is going to grade. The first part being student interactions with academic content, and the second part being the schedules of interaction between students and teachers. So the first pages in your booklet and the first documents we have to submit are our sample schedules. You'll see the minutes per day expectations for elementary. Our secondary schedules are built around our campus bell schedules, and teachers are expected to engage students in Zoom at least twice per week at secondary. K through 12, teachers are expected to connect with students daily through Canvas and to provide regular feedback on student progress. It's expected that virtual teachers will post office hours or conference period times in their Canvas course for student and parent questions. And finally, that they make sure parents understand the best way to get a hold of them if questions do come up. Differentiation for students with additional learning needs. In our daily schedules, time is provided for intervention and enrichment. These opportunities will be provided to students based on the data observed in the various progress monitoring assessments and teacher observations, and I'll touch on a few of those a little bit later. During this intervention and enrichment time, students might receive one-on-one support from the teacher, they might participate in small groups, or engage in differentiated activities asynchronously in Canvas. The second piece of our plan deals with material design. We have to ensure that we have a full TEKS-aligned asynchronous curriculum, that we have instructional materials to support special populations. You'll see a series of charts in your booklet that detail the instructional materials that we've adopted as a district, and most of those have to come to the board for approval, and so those have happened over the last few years. You'll see a list of the progress monitoring assessments we administer at each level and in each subject. We are affirming that they're TEKS aligned, and you'll see some of the supports that are available for both our students with disabilities and our English language learners. You'll also have links to a couple of different documents that our special ed department and our EL department have prepared. When we're designing and adopting our curriculum that we've adopted to make sure that our students at home with virtual instruction are getting their needs met, we are integrating these resources into TEKS-aligned instructional material modules that are created in Canvas. Our students are accessing the curriculum through ClassLink and Canvas. Our asynchronous students are following the same scope and sequence as our students in the face-to-face classroom. We do recognize that some of our CTE courses and some of our advanced science courses require hands-on learning as part of their scope and sequence and required curriculum. So we're working with teachers on hybrid activities where our virtual students are coming to school to demonstrate their learning. And again, I mentioned additional supports for ELs and students with disabilities. Students receiving additional supports and services will follow the same guidelines and protocols as our other students with special consideration given to their specific individual needs. Students who are entitled to additional instructional or related services through a designated plan like an IEP service plan, an IEP, a service plan, LPAC, or pullout will receive those supports and services, no matter if they are on campus or in our virtual environment. And again, I mentioned you see a couple of different external resources that our teams have provided to support our teachers working with ELs and our teachers working with students with disabilities. The next piece of the plan is student progress. We need to show how we're tracking daily student engagement and how we're tracking student achievement and feedback. Daily instruction for all students appropriately focuses on student progress and standards and the continuation of learning in the Lamar CISD scope and sequence. Virtual teachers are expected to contact parents who are of students who are disengaged. Disengaged students might not be submitting daily work tasks, not participating in synchronous Zoom sessions, etc. As we're tracking daily engagement, we at minimum must follow the TEA ADA funding guidance. To measure high level of engagement, we are the high level engagement required for asynchronous work. We're working to develop a teacher rubric that will stand as the standard of completion and quality that is considered acceptable, matching that level of engagement in the virtual world to the face-to-face environment. We're tracking using these 4 daily engagement measures. We're tracking daily progress in Canvas. We're tracking completion of a submission of assignments. We're tracking participation in synchronous learning opportunities through Zoom. And we're tracking daily progress via student interactions that might be happening in email or over the phone. Teachers are tracking student progress primarily through the completion of TEKS-aligned daily assignments and activities, and interaction with the teacher and checkpoints in Canvas. Grades are being entered in Skyward as the official gradebook, and the LCISD grading policy remains the same for our students in both the virtual and the on-campus world. We also have a number of data points for tracking student progress. We use the circle testing, we use GRA, TPRI, iReady, district progress monitoring assessments, or PMAs, and TEA interim assessments, as well as just daily campus assignments, campus assessments, and so on. A more detailed list is found in those charts with the orange headings. Teachers are expected to provide daily feedback to students who are working asynchronously in Canvas. Parents also have full access to student work, interactions with the teacher, assignment submissions, feedback, and all that great stuff through our Canvas parent portal. The parent portal also establishes a 2-way communication channel between parents and teachers. So teachers can message or email their teachers directly through Canvas. The final part of the plan is our implementation plan. So it starts with PD for asynchronous instruction, addressing our staff, and then family communications and support and how we're supporting our families. You'll see an attachment or a chart that is the LCISD training schedule. It details the training opportunities and professional development that was provided before school started, and then the continuous support that teachers will be receiving as the year continues. Trainings in the training support schedule are offered via Canvas, asynchronously, or synchronously through webinars or face-to-face trainings on campus where feasible. For ongoing support, district-level teaching and learning team members, student program team members, special education team members are all out on campuses for campus visits, virtual office hours, and coaching and support on a regular basis for that just-in-time needed training. When it comes to our families, we started communicating the work that the subcommittees had done over the summer with our return to school guidelines that were released in the middle of July, as parents were trying to make that first decision about how their students would begin the year. We've added additional information as updates have been made by TEA, and there's an easy COVID-19 update button on our district homepage. As we continue the year, we'll use the district homepage, our Canvas parent portal, various other means of communication, including social media, Skylert, and so on, to make sure our parents have the most up-to-date information. We have some additional supports for families laid out in our plan. The LCISD Student Support Services team partners with the campus leaders to make sure our students' needs are met with things like school supplies, backpacks, social and emotional support, and so on. 4 Canvas for Guardian webinars were hosted in the evenings before school started. Those recordings of those webinars, as well as the PowerPoint slides from the sessions, can be found on the district webpage by clicking on the Canvas button. And families can contact the Student Support Help Desk if they're having issues with an LCISD checked out laptop or iPad. There are other details in the plan. I didn't go through all of it, but we've covered all 4 key areas. Again, most of the information in the plan came from the work that the subcommittees have done over the summer, and additional work that we continue to do as the year progresses. We've included all 4 of these key components. Upon board approval, and with any edits that need to be made, we will submit our plan to TEA prior to that October 1st deadline. They'll review our plan. If they approve it and our score is high enough on the rubric, then the plan will move forward as approved. If they have feedback for us or corrections that need to be made, they'll notify us of the revisions that must be made, and they will give us 15 to 30 days to resubmit. And then again, we'll get our feedback. The end goal is that we must have a plan, an approved plan in place before the end of the third 6 weeks grading period in December in order for us to continue to receive ADA funding. What questions do you have for me?
Any questions?
Ms.
I have
Kay, I
questions,
think you
but
have
I
some
want-
questions.
No,
Or some
I want
comments.
you guys start.
Go ahead, John, you have questions?
I don't have a lot of questions. I just wanted to say, you know, the public might not know is that the board members, we don't work in the district and we're not paid, so I go to work every day. And I don't see a lot of this interaction, and I don't personally, as an individual, I don't see how you guys could have come up with a better plan, because, I mean, there's so many factors, and I feel like that we've started out of the gate properly back in August, and I think that we have, you know, of course, there's some growing pains and some things that needed to be adjusted, but a lot of other districts they fumbled and they tripped coming out of the gate, it seems like, and I think that Lamar's done a very good job, and I know that this plan's probably gonna have some tweaks as it goes along the way, but sounds very thorough to me.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ms. Kaminsky.
No, I've had an opportunity in the early childhood. Daycares, there's one center, I think they have 15 online and virtual. We have some on virtual. And the conflicts we're having are more on the scheduling. So my question was that there are some schools that are doing virtual or had been doing virtual. Did y'all check into their kind of scheduling, or was this just from our committee?
So our committee followed the guidelines that TEA provided, so the samples and the supports and the suggestions. We have to have the minimum number of minutes,
Right.
whether that's asynchronously through Canvas or on Zoom. And so, you know, we've left some flexibility to our teachers about how many and how often. We've set some minimum requirements, but we're basically focusing on the TEA guidance.
Okay.
Mhm.
A couple of things I noticed, the inconsistency of the schedule. And, you know, I can't imagine a mother that's got 2, 3 children at home, because an example was with us, the morning schedule starts at different times, depending on the teacher. It's not 7:30.
Right,
And-
and you're correct. So a lot of our virtual teachers are helping with duty on campus or helping with morning responsibilities as students are transitioning into the building. And so their day may start at 7:30, but it might start with an asynchronous activity or something online to warm up. The Zoom, we're not a synchronous district, so the Zoom calls are not gonna start necessarily right at 7:30 in every classroom.
And that was the situation. If you had one child here that started at 7:30, you have another one at 8:30, and you have another one at 9 o'clock. I mean, if a parent has more than one child, I feel for her. Same thing with lunches. When I was looking at this virtual, it was like, is there some way that these lunch breaks, there again, if you have more than one, or if you have a community that's, the parents are working, but they're sending them to another group, these lunch breaks are at all different times.
You have to remember that we're doing our best to keep our virtual students lined up with our on-campus students. Some of our teachers have, you know, one group of virtual and one group of face-to-face, and they're rotating or switching with other teachers on their campus. And so the lunch times mirror the lunch times on campus. So, you know, our kindergartners eat at a different time than our third graders. And so you're gonna see that variance in schedule as the teachers are working with the other teachers on their campus. We want their planning time to be the same. So if I'm a third grade virtual teacher, I'm meeting with the other third grade teachers at the same time that their conference period is. So our virtual schedules are somewhat dictated by our on-campus schedules, because we do wanna make sure that communication is seamless.
I think that's what I was noticing was, because basically the community had been prepared for having the students while the parents are working.
Mhm.
And even some of the parents I talked to, you know, they got 2 or 3, say, try to do this schedule. And so it got me to thinking, you know, when there is virtual, do they think about the families? But you're saying TEA is the one that kind of gave you the guidelines.
Yes,
So they're
ma'am.
the people that we would need to say, have you thought about this?
There's lots of logistics to consider, and you know, every bit of it is part of the conversation. But the big picture items are, again, that consistent communication and our teachers working together and planning together. So we feel like the schedules are really important. We can't set a lunchtime, for example, where all of our kiddos could be off for lunch, because it would take an adjustment to all of the other schedules on campus.
Every campus has their own
Yes, ma'am.
specific schedule
Yes,
of
ma'am.
how they do things.
Mhm.
So
Right.
And
you
correct,
can't,
and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Katie, there's a possibility that when the kids come back,
Yes, ma'am.
they have to match the schedule of the school. And you can't have 5 or 6 different schedules trying to match back on the campuses. And that's one of the things that also drives this.
You're absolutely correct, yes.
I guess in essence, I'm saying, you know, virtual sounds good, but it does not fit when you're trying to use the regular school schedule and incorporate it into a virtual schedule. It's not friendly.
It's
not
not, but the
friendly
whole
schedule.
public school system is built on in-person classes, and we've been thrown a wrench, the whole world and the society. And
You
we're
guys-
trying to take this
You
model.
guys have to ask questions since it's a workshop.
Okay?
no, you say, isn't it true?
I forgot that wording.
Pretend like you're on Jeopardy.
Sorry,
Okay,
sorry.
at what point, then I'm gonna ask a question.
Yeah.
At what point, if virtual continues on, and we do have this community of childcare centers that are taking on this responsibility, and they're working their best on it, but at what point will they ever have any communications with our district, more or less like someone come there, if they request it, to come over there and give them some guidelines? Have y'all thought about that?
I think that one of the things to keep in mind, Ms. Kaminsky, is that our teams are very small. And, you know, launching virtual school is a stretch for everybody. So it's not that we wouldn't be willing, it's just a matter of capacity. So I think if there's a specific concern or a specific issue that needs to be addressed, then asking that question, and we will do our best to support and answer the question. But we don't have the team, the size, the need to visit all of the different learning sites in our district. You know, or all of the different homes in our district. You know, we're trying to answer questions and field those issues as they pop up.
The videos you said are still all online for them,
Yes.
for people to reference in case
Yes.
they missed them. or
Yes,
anything.
you click on the Canvas button, lots of great information, including the videos and the
I think
PowerPoint slides.
The biggest challenge is, though, I think of the little old schoolhouse where the teacher taught kindergarten, they taught all 5, 6 grades, and that's where some of the campus or organizations we have are in that dilemma. They're the little old schoolhouse trying to do all of this.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, second question, when I was visiting some, it was obvious that some of the students, especially the kindergartners, needed to be in school for learning possibilities. Could they change if they find out in another week or two, or they're convinced that this is just not gonna work? Can they go back before the 9 weeks?
We're gonna stand firm with those 6 weeks and 9 weeks cutoffs, because there are lots of things that it impacts. So, you know, if we have 10 kindergartners that mom and dad decide need to come back on campus, that's a class of kiddos, and we would have to switch a teacher back from virtual to face-to-face, very likely, and then you're upsetting, you know, you could potentially be upsetting 40 or 50 kiddos. So
Probably
those,
didn't make that clear enough. The ones that you can tell they have a learning disability, or would that be an exception?
I'm gonna, just because I've been involved in this as well, is that there have been accommodations that have been made, and that is the importance of the relationship between the principals as well as in the parents. And so all of those different issues, particularly as we've launched the school year, have been troubleshooted by our administrators. And there have been kids that we have made allowances for, families we've made allowances for, that was in the best interest. Where Katie, or Miss Marchena is talking about is that when you have a smaller school and you have a lower number in the classes, that easy and opening it up at that point is a little easier than when you're looking at a class of 22. And so if you're gonna be affecting 25 kids by making a choice to move 2 or 3, then we have to do a pause on that. We have provided a lot of grace and have been working with our families definitely as we have launched this. We have 2 simultaneous campuses that are happening, basically. We have on campus and then we definitely have virtual. And so what we're doing is we're troubleshooting with each family, but as we move into that 6 weeks period, the 6 secondary schools are choosing right now, and then on September 28th, the elementaries will. And so I would encourage any family member to ensure to contact their school, but we are trying to be very firm with those dates moving forward because the impact on the master schedule and the staffing that results from those choices.
But if a parent was concerned, they should contact their principal.
Absolutely, yes. Contact the campus principal, and we have so many parents that are currently doing that right now. And because it's not just about letting them out there, one of the things the principals have been talking about is what kind of interventions or supports we can provide for the virtual environment until we're able to make that transition, and that is a focus of our administrators.
Thank you.
I had another question about the devices. I think, have we been handing out more devices and have more students bringing their own to school and using? Because I guess I've been reading that they're trying to do more work through Canvas and turning in their work that way, so there's no paper, I assume no paper passing between teacher and student. So are we okay with that, or are we running low?
We checked out a number of devices to our virtual students. We had an initial order of 4,000 computers that has been delivered. I would say David can probably tell us all are in district and have been disseminated to campuses, depending on their size and their enrollment. And then there's another order of 4,000 that will be here mid-October. And so those will also refresh our campus stock. Last week and this week, we started to deliver some iPads to elementary campuses, because a number of our elementary campuses had checked out iPads as devices to students, and so their on-campus supply was low. Mm-hmm. So, we are encouraging, if they have a device at home, if they have a BYOT option, that they bring that to school. Our teachers are using Canvas. We want our kiddos to be comfortable. So if we would have to pivot, we would have to send a whole bunch of kindergartners home, do they have at least a comfort level with Canvas, so that it's not a huge shift or turn as the year progresses.
So it's basically getting everybody on the same page.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Thank you
All right.
so much.
Thank you.
The next item is that we ask the Board of Trustees to approve the updated articulation agreement submitted by Wharton County Junior College for continuing education credit and certification opportunities for career and technology education certified nurse aide students in Lamar CISD. The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve the service agreement with Memorial Herman Sugarland. The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve the updated dual credit partnership agreement submitted by Wharton County Junior College for continuing technical dual credit opportunities for career and technology education students in Lamar CISD. The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to ratify the financial and investment reports as presented. The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to review and accept the district Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting Award for its comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ending August 31, 2019, and the school year 2018-19.
You have a question?
Do you?
No, I don't. I should say yay, congratulations.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure if this is where I should be asking this question. On the report about the size of the schools and then the number of, employees we have, would this be the time I could question that off of that report?
I'm not sure that that's in this report.
Just launch, just do it.
This is what that was,
Well,
they got a certificate of excellence for their financial.
Well, that's why I'm questioning. Okay, I'll figure a way to ask it later.
Okay. The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve a resolution regarding the closure of schools from Wednesday, August 26, 2020 through Friday, August 28, 2020. Authorize the superintendent of schools to revise the calendar as necessary and apply to the Texas Education Agency for a waiver of missed instructional minutes, and authorize the payment of employee and long-term subs.
I have a question on that. This one and the next one. We missed August 26th, 27th, and 28th, and we're going to apply for a waiver for August 28th.
Yes.
So can you
The-
explain to us and the public what happens to August 26th and 27th?
The TEA requires that we use the minutes for 2 days prior to applying or using any waiver days. So Wednesday and Thursday are the 2 days that are already built in with embedded minutes in our calendar. So that'll meet the TEA requirement, and then Friday will be the waiver day that we apply for.
So does that mean we do not have any other weather days built into the schedule between now and May, or?
I think there's still two days worth of minutes. Might be able to help us with that a little bit.
So with the 2021 calendar, we actually have excess minutes built into the calendar. So if we have up to 2 bad weather makeup days or 2 bad weather days, we make them up without having to come back to school or work. And so what we've done here is we've utilized those minutes for the first 2 days, and now we're requesting a waiver for that 3rd day. So we are out of minutes for any further issues. So if there's an ice day or something else, we do have on the calendar identified bad weather makeup days for planning purposes. So if we have an ice day or something in February, we would utilize one of those 2 days at the end of the year, unless the state was to give us an exception.
Thank you.
Can I ask, we are definitely closed fair day, correct? Because I've had people asking me about that.
We're definitely closed
That's not going to be a makeup day.
It is
Correct.
not a makeup.
And then Good Friday, though, is set up that we may have to use that if we run out of,
Is it set up as a weather?
He's looking for it right now, and so that.
I think
we
that's
don't
that,
miss
is that
the-
that DMA day?
That's
I believe that it is.
it-
It's the DMA day, so that's not, and
Right, so Good Friday is a DMA day, so no one has to report to work on that day. So there should not be a situation, it's not a bad weather makeup day. The
Okay.
bad weather makeup day would be the Monday
Yeah.
after Good Friday and the Easter Sunday weekend.
that would be the makeup day?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
yeah, it's on the very back of your.
Yeah, I wanted to make it clear.
Okay, did you have another question? Okay.
The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees ratify the acquisition or purchase of goods and services required to date to respond to the COVID-19 emergency by means other than those prescribed in Texas Education Agency Code Section 44.0 031 of the Texas Government Code, Chapter 2269, and amendments to the general fund budget for emergency expenditures relating to the reopening of school for the 2020-21 school year. If you recall, the board gave the superintendent the authority to be able to take and purchase goods if we had to do it during the COVID emergency.
Dr. Randall, can you explain this page in, for the sake of the public, in 6B, number 4, that we're talking about, and all the different figures on here? I think we authorized up to $5 million of spending, is that correct?
Right, we'll let our CFO respond, so that we're consistent.
She's up in there.
Yes, we did, in July, well, I don't know why I'm putting that on. In July, we asked for the authority, or asked for you all to delegate authority to Dr. Randall to amend the budget and to make emergency purchases and things like that related to COVID-19. We did set a cap on that of $5 million, and it was gonna be in place for 90 days from, I think it was July 14th forward, so that would put us in October. And then if we needed more time or additional authorization, we would come back to the board for additional days after the 90 days elapsed. But as stated in the next to last paragraph, no, actually the third to the final paragraph, we're at 4.4 million of the 5 that we requested right now.
And this is an amendments of 1.1 million.
This month, yes. We adopt, or you all adopt the budget at the function code level. So we did break out the 1.1 million by function. So 770,000 of that will be in function 11, which is classroom instruction, and then 330,000 in function 51, which is plant maintenance. So you're gonna, in function 51, the 330,000 is for barrier devices in classrooms, webcams, PPE, things like that. Actually, I misspoke on that. The 330,000 is for gloves, sanitizer, wipes, e-mist machines, and things like that. And that's function 51. And then the 770,000 is actually for classroom barriers for students at their desks and tables, webcams, and other miscellaneous classroom items.
Thank you very much.
I have a question on the dividers and barriers. I know that the amendments, it says in September, but are all of those items in, and have they been delivered to classrooms, or are we still waiting on them?
This is to amend the budget in order to accommodate the purchases. So I'll let Chris talk about the research and samples that they've looked at.
My office is full of barriers and dividers. We've really dug into it, and what we're looking to do is to be forward-thinking, that as we know, as we do a good job, we're going to have more of our students come back to face-to-face learning. And we know as we do that our classrooms, it will be more difficult to distance. So what we're looking to do is, through a process of both some desk barriers that we've researched and feel like we've got the right item to purchase, and also through what we call some quad barriers, or quad dividers, that we will manufacture in-house at a greatly reduced cost. We're actually working with our elementaries right now to get their orders for how many they want in each classroom. So we're looking at, in the next few weeks, rolling those out. And this approves the expenditure so that we can order those barriers and produce the dividers.
Okay, so could you just explain what the dividers and the barriers are? Is it made out of plexiglass and it goes between
The barrier is a 3-sided plexiglass that mounts on the desk. The dividers are fabricated from PVC tubing and clear plastic sheeting that create a 4-way divider that you can put 4 student desks in. I apologize. I'll get y'all a picture.
I've seen some of those online.
So we're going to work on rolling that out for classrooms if they want that device. And that helps, obviously, for when we have student desks It doesn't help for tables, and especially at the lower grades. That's why we're looking at those individual barriers for those tables at the lower grades.
What's the timeline for rolling that out?
As soon as we get approval, we're looking at about 2 to 3 weeks to receive the dividers from the company. We just need to get that order in because other school districts are ordering as well. The barriers the quad barriers, we're starting to produce those and we'll start rolling them out next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have, just to clarify, the authorization was for 5 million, correct?
Yes, yes,
And we're at that 4.4.
right.
I know that cleaning and disinfecting products and everything is very, very expensive, no matter who you are. And that was 330,000 in 2 months?
That's for future purchases in the next month. We're getting approval this month for future purchases and actually current orders that are in the system now.
So that disinfecting products, we're gonna be looking at this every month around that amount, or?
Well,
Is
we've
that-
got some in stock, and we've got some on order. We have one manufacturer that has experienced a delay. So we've got some that's gonna be in the next couple weeks, then we'll order some more, of course, now that'll come in after that. But, since this delegation goes through October, if we continue to need additional supplies and additional funds to purchase those, then we'll ask for an extension and ask for additional funds as we
Okay.
need it.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve the resolutions for, first of all, character counts, Custodial Worker Recognition Week, Human Resources Day, Red Ribbon Week, Safe Schools Week, School Bus Safety Week, and School Lunch Week. The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve the Superintendent SMART Goals for 2020-21. The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve the 2019-20 Attendance Boundary Committee recommendations to establish the attendance boundary area for Randall High School and Wright Junior High School for the 2020-22 school year.
There's gotta be some questions. No?
Any questions?
Ms. Kay? Go ahead.
Well, no, I'm just, how are we going to vote on this if we're not going to be, okay, never. I do have a couple of questions. On the map 2, we have a choice of the map 2 as is, or the map 2 adding. No,
28A.
taking away 28A.
Adding.
Putting it back.
Putting back.
Well, it adds it to Lamar.
Back.
It's at Lamar now. So 2.2.
Back.
Right, ultimately, the board can do whatever it wants in terms of any of the recommendations or even creating its own map. At last month's meeting, the maps that are in the board book were requested for the board's review. The difference between option 2 and option 2 plus 28A, it just takes that one planning unit and puts it back to its current campus, which is Lamar Consolidated High School. And that's something that the Attendance Boundary Committee actually looked at its final meeting and actually approved to do.
Okay, then Carter, I don't know why it went on my notes. I had at some point in time, it was discussed that Carter would go to 62 to Randall, 38 Lamar. But the original one was 100%. So are we going with the 6238
I think
on 2A?
there would be no impact between 2 or 2 plus 28A in terms of any elementary schools like Carter. That would remain the same.
So it would stay as 100?
So for example, if you looked at, let's look at it together here.
Option 1 was 6238.
That was the option 1.
Right. So if you look in your board book on page 78, you see the breakdown for the high schools. You also see the elementary feeder patterns over here. So 100% would go to Carter, and that's on page 78, the bottom right graph.
Okay, this is option 2 of 2, which is saying to do 28 back to Lamar.
So that would be on page 82, but it also has the exact same 100% of the students at Carter would attend George Ranch High School.
So there is no 6238 option on 2.
No, it's
No,
on
ma'am.
1.
Okay, that's what I was trying to understand.
Mhm.
That would still set, because that was the original.
Right.
Is that correct?
So for each option, if the board were to look at that, I believe it's the third page for each option, you'll see a breakdown of what that looks like for our elementary schools. So for the committee recommendation, option 1, option 2 with 28A, and option 22, you'll see exactly what that looks like in terms of the distribution, if it's a split track campus, if it's a single track campus. So that's broken out on each of those pages.
Maybe it was a bad thing to do, but this was the one that we originally gave. It said keeping elementary schools tracking together. And on map 2, option 2, it says 4 units are intact and only 1 would have a 19% split. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Okay. I'm trying to figure out if I should just throw this particular, and I have copies of it for everybody, but it says on map 2, there was 4 units, elementary units that stay intact, and there's going to be only one with a 19% split.
That would be, so if you look at option 2, and this would be on page 78, you can see here that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 split track campuses. That would be Arredondo, Beasley, Culver, and Meyer. And you see the splits there. And we've had this conversation as a fast growth school district that it is really hard in a fast growth school district, and we all know that we're at the top, being a top 5 fast growth school district, to keep our elementaries tracking to the same high school with perfection when you include different neighborhoods and different things like that. What we try not to do is have it below 10%, which would be called a splinter. And so that would be 90% of an elementary campus going to one secondary feeder pattern and 10% going to another. So when you get to about 91%, 9%, it's tough for that smaller group of kids to feel at home. So when you do split a campus into 2 feeder patterns, you want to make sure that it's a little bit larger here. So you see at Meyer, 81% would go to Randall and 19% would go to Terry High School.
Okay, then on map 22, originally it was that 2 units were intact in comparison to 4 units staying intact under map 2. And it said 2 undesirable splits.
So on
Is
option,
that still the same case?
so I can speak again to the same thing. If we look at page 86, there will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the 7 elementary feeder patterns would be split. And again, the largest divide would be at Meyer, 81% to Randall and 19% to Terry.
I was bringing it up because my questions were to which one would be least disruptive to the elementary schools as far as their splitting up. And 2, when I was looking at it, now that I see that Carter was not changed, it's staying at the 100%. So the statement that there's only one that has a 19% split, and that would be Meyer.
Correct. So in option 2, 4 of the campuses remain 100% tracking to one secondary feeder pattern, whereas when you look at option 22, the majority of those are split.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna go a different direction. I'm really more concerned with the actual high schools and how we're affecting their class size, but not their size of the schools, but the ethnicity and SES breakdown. Because when you look at option 1, Randall is it open up, or by the time they got to all 4 years at 45%?
This would be effective for the 2021 school year.
Okay. But then if you go to your
21,
option-
I'm sorry, next year.
Next
We're in the
year.
2021 school
Okay,
year. This would be
21,
effective.
22.
Yes, ma'am.
It would open up at 45%, but if you go to your 2 or 2.2, it's at 55%. Is that, what are we changing to, is that the Pendleton, or is that, what's causing the big jump there? Or can you tell?
Oh, I probably couldn't tell exactly, looking at each different planning unit. I think the main thing is that, you know, one planning unit is probably not going to impact the eco-dis area, but, you know, obviously each one of these maps is comprised of planning units, which are like census blocks for our attendance boundary zones. And whenever you clump those together, it's going to impact the number of students from different parts. But yes, a difference between option 2 is that Kendleton area and other areas, but I think you have to look at it as a whole.
Okay. And I know I sent you the question about the numbers of kids that are impacted. You brought back that 28A, which is the reserve.
Mhm.
They would have 105 students, 9 through 12, in the 20, well, that's this year, 2020, 2021. So those are, I was trying to figure out how many kids are we, if we did move the 28A, it was projected to move over to Terry, am I correct, on the original plan?
Yeah, so what originally happened is that the attendance boundary created option 2. And then one of the things that we heard at the public input meeting was when you created option 2, you moved planning unit 28A, which is the reserve neighborhood. You moved it from Lamar to Terry, and they really didn't see what the purpose of that was, and they had requested to go back to their original campus. We all know that whenever you move neighborhoods and areas, it's always easier to move to a newer campus, and if you're moving between, we try to minimize that. Sometimes it's not possible, just based upon the growth in the area. But the attendance boundary committee heard that, and when they came back to the final meeting, they actually addressed that and said, can we move 28A back to Lamar in option 2? And 71% of the committee said yes. And so that was early in the meeting, and then for the remainder of the meeting, when we referenced option 2, the committee was voting on option 2 with 28A back to Lamar.
And that was, I was at that meeting too, and I just felt like it was something that was very strong. The other thing, if I'm correct, it was very strong about moving the Kendleton students to Randall, just because of the bus pattern. Might be a little bit longer bus, but it's a safer trip, is what.
Yes, the transportation director spoke, Mr. Jones, and talked about that. And, you know, the more you can be off of a major highway, 5969, the safer it is for our students. But in terms of distance, it was fairly equal.
How many students do come from Kendleton, about approximately?
Oh, goodness, I might have to look at my.
That's okay, that's
Around
okay.
90 or so, I think,
Around
total.
100, something like that.
What number is Kendleton, 40?
42B.
124? Well, that's a 2023 that I'm looking at. The extra travel that would be imposed, but that's for 2023. It was 124 students, according to this.
Yeah, I can look it up in our binder.
That's okay, that's all right. That's
But it is,
less.
like Dr. Randall mentioned, it's
Around
roughly
100. Okay.
around that number.
Thank you.
It would be 100 or less.
Because if I'm
Go ahead.
On map 2, it's my understanding that as far as traveling time, there's less, on map 2, what I'm looking at said about 500, a total of 577 additional miles. Map 22 was 1,757. So the 22 map, traveling-wise, everything was more.
I would have to
Okay.
confer with Mr. Jones on the exact mileage differences.
Well,
Are
I-
you still talking about Kendallton?
Well, no, in map 2, no, the whole
Okay,
area,
okay.
all the schools.
Oh, just
Yeah, we had
rearranging.
this chart, yeah, and it was trying to show that you wouldn't have to do as much traveling under map 2 as you would under 22. I guess that's my difference that I was asking, or wanting to call it to the attention of everybody.
So,
I think it would depend on a particular planning unit. There was a lot of conversation among the attendance boundary committee specifically on areas like Kendallton and that planning unit and the travel time between it versus Lamar where those students currently attend or going to Randall. So that was really the discussion at the attendance boundary committee, and the transportation director clarified that roughly it's about the same time between going to Lamar Consolidated High School or going to Randall High School. However, you would spend less time off of a major roadway if those students went to Randall.
Any more questions?
Dr. Eckwood, I do have one question, and it's basically, I know that one of the purposes, the main purpose is to help relieve George Ranch High School. But what are the other purposes of doing the rezoning? Is it to relieve Terry, to relieve Lamar? And I guess a sub-question that I have would be, PASA in their demographic report, is there a plan to put a high school somewhere in here that would relieve Lamar, Terry, Randall, or George Ranch somewhere within the next 5 or 6 years?
So, good questions. I think ultimately the request would be that we're looking to relieve the capacity and the enrollment at George Ranch High School and Terry High School. Those are our campuses that are above capacity, certainly George Ranch High School. And so the purpose of Randall High School is to relieve those two. I think if you think back to the previous zoning process when we opened up Fulshire High School, we're sort of in a north-south mode right now. So we were up north and we opened up Fulshire, and that only impacted Fulshire and Foster. It didn't impact George Ranch, Terry, or Lamar. Now that we're down south, a lot of our conversation is around Lamar, Terry, a little bit of Lamar and Randall High School, but we're not including Foster or Fulshire. The expectation would be the next high school would more than likely be back in the north, and that would include Fulshire, Foster, and there would be an opportunity based on the northern portion of Lamar being north of 5969, they could be included in that discussion. It would be harder to have a conversation if one of our southern campuses was highly over capacity and you're up north. Otherwise, you're going to have to redraw all the boundaries. One of the objectives of the zoning process is to minimize that student movement. And so the fact that we've moved our attendance boundaries, secondary feeder patterns in the north, and now we're focusing on the south, ideally, we would want to lower the enrollment for a longer period of time down south so we can focus on Fulshire, Foster, and Lamar in the next attendance boundary committee process for secondary.
No, it's not likely in the next 5 years.
So my next question then is option 1, which was the option that was developed by PASA. Right?
Correct.
They, in option 1, Lamar is going to be over capacity, I mean, starting next year, but over really the functional capacity starting in 2024. So I guess, why would we introduce a plan at first that has, you know, within the next 4 years, their functional capacity overloaded, and then you've got schools like Randall and George Ranch are going to be, not significantly, but they're going to be under
Right. So when you look at option one, which is on page 74, specifically what Mr. Hunt is talking about, what the demographer was looking at is that George Ranch, Randall, and Terry would all be good in terms of enrollment for several years. As a fast-growth school district, if we've got 7 years under 120% space utilization, we're doing good. In 2024, however, Lamar would hit that 120% space utilization. The thought being is that at that time, if the 2020 bond were to be approved by our voters, we would have that 7th high school, and Lamar would be included in those conversations with Fulsher and Foster to adjust the capacity at that time. And then certainly George Ranch, Terry, and Randall would be in a better position further south in the district.
Do you remember, just, I wasn't in the meetings from the committee, what some of the objections were to option one?
You know, I don't know if there were necessarily objections. I feel like that we always feel it's important to include the community input, and they went right to work with those 24 plus different options. And so I think part of it is that it's sometimes you can receive it all, but you've got to go through and do the work. And so our committees broke up in socially distanced rooms, and they created many maps. Then they came back and had conversations and votes on those maps. You'll look at the back of your binder. Option one was still being discussed by the committee at that final meeting several times. But I think like anything else, you know, the demographer draws it from a very statistical numbers point of view. The individuals on the committee live here in Lamar CISD and have many reasons for the different options they prefer.
Very diplomatic way of saying that.
I try.
Any more questions?
I have curiosity question. And this is where I'm going back to that CAFR report. What is the capacity for George Ranch and Fulsher?
So the capacity is 2,000. And George Ranch is currently at 2,800.
Okay,
Once one of our newer model campuses, George Ranch, Fulsher, Foster, Randall, once they hit 2,400 students, that's when they're at 120% space utilization. And really, that's a number because you could be at 100% capacity and still operate okay. When you get to 120% of the space utilization of a campus, that's when you start to feel it. Cafeterias, hallways, restrooms, the number of students that are on the campus,
Portable
obviously
buildings.
classroom space.
so this report that I was looking at, it said 2019. It was listing each high school, the square footage, capacity, and enrollment. I guess that, it confused me. If I am seeing George Ranch and the capacity was 1,400, was I to assume that that was just for 2019?
No, I'd have to look at the report personally. I know that.
It's page 134.
Of the CAFR?
Yeah,
In the CAFR.
it says, school building information, and it lists the high schools, Lamar, square footage, and then the capacity 2,000.
Mm-hmm.
BF Terry, capacity 2,050. Foster 2,000. George Ranch 1,400. Church, Fulsher 1,400. I was trying to figure out, because I thought it was over 2,000.
I would say that the capacity of George Ranch High School is 2,000. I don't have that report in front of me.
We need to look at what you're looking at because.
Yeah, it's on page 134.
Well, we don't
You're
have
talking
that.
about a report that's lagging
Oh,
a
y'all
couple of
didn't,
years.
y'all didn't,
A couple of years behind for one thing.
yeah, it's,
and-
this is for 2019.
That's in the non-statistical, or actually it's the statistical section of our annual financial report, and it does lag, so,
But that's what I was trying to understand was, the 1,400 was
That's when
only
that- when
for the
Fulsher was-
2019. That is not for the square footage.
When Fulsher was built, it was a capacity of 1,400, and then we went back and added the shell space build-out, which brought it up to 2,000.
They just did that
So the
this
next
year.
report, we should see the two, because that was
Yes.
very, like, well, wait a minute, you're telling me square footage, but now you're saying capacity. Okay, so we have to wait another.
Right, many of those financial reports.
134, I printed it
I
out.
don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I've
Paperwork.
been wondering the whole time what report you're referencing, because it's not,
No, it's the report that's got a lot of pages to it.
Many financial reports lag several years, and so like Mr. McKeever mentioned, when we build our campuses before the shelf space, the capacity would be lower. When we come back and add it, then it pulls it up to 2,000. So there's always a lag in years. So as we move forward and get closer to current, it should be 2,000.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And Lamar High School can be compared to the other schools. It always seems to me it's smaller, but it still is at a 2,000 capacity.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
But even when you walk the halls with 2,000,
It's just single
It's very-
story and spread out.
Those vaulted ceilings help a lot.
Okay.
Just tight hallways. Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
no, but before we move on, I just want to let the people who know, who might be watching this on YouTube or tuned in live, that I was mildly rebuked earlier for debating, so there's going to be more of those kind of discussions Thursday night at the actual meeting. So this is a time for us to have our questions answered from you guys, the administration.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Sorry, John.
Just trying to follow the rules over here.
Sorry.
You're doing good. The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve engineer error balance for the HVAC test and balance service for the HVAC web controls for Jane Long Historical Gymnasium renovation in the amount of $22,555. The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve Estes McClure and Associates as commissioning agents for Jane Long Historical Gymnasium renovation in the amount of $11,000. The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve environmental solutions for abatement monitoring services for the renovations at Jane Long Historical Gymnasium in a total amount of $4,325. The next item, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve a request from Rosenberg Masonic Lodge 881 and Martin Masonic Lodge number 72 to lay cornerstones for the Dr. Thomas E. Randall High and Harry Wright Junior High Schools. The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve the appraisers who have recently become certified or are new to Lamar CISD. And Madam President, those are all of the action items.
Okay, did we have any questions on any of the information items?
Actually, you can do public
Audience
comment.
too.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. Public comments. Okay. Ms. Bosick, are there any public comments?
Yes, Madam Chairman. If you wish to address the board, you must fill out a card and submit it before the presiding officer calls the meeting to order. While speakers generally have 5 minutes to address the board, the presiding officer may establish an overall time limit for public comment and adjust the time allotted to each speaker when necessary to accommodate a large number of speakers. However, no speaker shall be given less than 1 minute. While the board values hearing from members of the public, trustees may not respond to comments as they are prohibited by law from discussing or deciding any subject that is not on the board's publicly noticed agenda. Speakers having complaints against individual district employees or trustees may only address the board after filing a complaint form in the manner provided for an applicable board policy, DGBA for employee complaints, F and G for student and parent complaints, and GF for public complaints. The presiding officer or designee shall determine whether a speaker has filed a complaint according to policy. Any speakers who complain of individual district employees or trustees during public comment will be directed by the presiding officer to stop addressing the board and will refer the speaker to the appropriate complaint policy. As you come forward, please state your name and your address. And our first speaker is Mary Tiffany.
And Ms. Bosick, since we have
Yes.
a large number of speakers, we're gonna keep it to 3 minutes per
Thank you.
speaker. Thank you.
My name is Mary Tiffany. My address is 9010 Downing Street, Rosenberg, Texas, 77469. I would like to address the board tonight about the Randall Wright zoning. I would like to thank the board for taking the time to look into this issue further and appreciate your encouraging public input. I have been following the ABC's work on the zoning issue throughout the summer and have looked at data for several of the maps. Map 2.1 creates attendance zones in a way that supports efficient and effective use of school facilities and reduces the overcrowding of campuses. Map 2.1 allows for more years of lower utilization. Lamar will have relief until the 26-27 school year. Randall will become overutilized in 28-29, and George Ranch will be overutilized in the 29 school year. Map 20 creates overcrowding beginning with Randall in 2023. This is the year after grandfathering ends, and Lamar overcrowds in 2025. However, George Ranch will continue to be underutilized throughout the 10-year projection. Map 20 underutilizes George Ranch. George Ranch has a lower percentage of socioeconomically disadvantaged students. With a low utilization percentage and lower socioeconomic disadvantage percentage, George Ranch begins to look nothing like the other schools in the district. Lamar and Randall will both be overutilized and have significantly higher percentages of socioeconomically disadvantaged students. This creates an imbalance of district resources. Map 20, the final recommended map, will pull low SES students from George Ranch and place them in Randall and Terry, stretching the already thin resources in Randall and Terry. According to the American Psychological Association's website, research indicates that children from low SES households and communities develop academic skills slower than children from higher SES groups. The school systems in low SES communities are often under-resourced, negatively affecting students' academic progress and outcomes. Improving school systems and early intervention programs may help to reduce some of these risk factors. Therefore, selecting a map that overutilizes schools with more socioeconomic disadvantaged students is only doing a disservice to our community. Voting for map 2 advocates for all students. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Lauren Dunn.
Good evening, Dr. Randall, Madam Vice President, members of the board. My name is Lauren Dunn, and I live at 5907 Rose Courts Lane in Rosenberg. First off, I would like to say thank you to all the board for handling the circumstances that 2020 has thrown at you with grace and efficiency. There have been many difficult decisions that have had to be made, and while I know they did not all come with agreement, I believe the best interests of our students, teachers, and staff have all tried to be accommodated. I also appreciate you not rushing this zoning decision, and to Mr. Welch for speaking up regarding the disparity in voting at the final committee meeting. Tonight I would like to make 5 points regarding the high school zoning, and I'll make sure to keep it short and sweet out of respect for your time and the others in this room. First, I want to say this is my personal opinion as a community member, taxpayer, and parent. The statements I'm making tonight are not a direct reflection of my position with either the Polly Ryan Community Organization or the Card Elementary PTO. Second, my neighborhood is not affected by the rezoning, and therefore my children will remain on the maroon track, whether map 2, map 20, map 22, or the second versions of any of the above are chosen. Third, my daughter is currently a 6th grader at Polly Ryan Middle School. Due to rezoning, my daughter and several other students on the maroon track, currently in 6th or 7th grade, will have attended 4 or more different schools in 5 years. While this is sometimes unavoidable, Objective 4 stakes to keep neighborhoods and feeder schools tracking together as much as possible. As you can tell from this chart, Map 2 allows for 1 or more elementary schools to be 100% on one track without adversely affecting another school. It also allows only 1 split under 20% instead of 2 to 3 splits under 20%. Fourth, I would like to thank you for identifying the 12 zoning objectives to aid in making an unbiased decision. Objectives 8, 9, and 11 are dealing with process and communication, but with regard to the other 9 objectives, Map 2 is far more beneficial than the initial recommendation, the final recommendation, or Map 20, as you can see from this chart. Fifth and finally, I'm urging you to choose Map 2 as this is what is what is best not only for the students of Carter Elementary and the Maroon Track, but the district around it as well. I appreciate your commitment to LCISD and appreciate you allowing me the time to speak tonight. And I was really nervous. Sorry for the shaking voice.
Thank you.
I'll leave this here for the next speaker.
Crystal Murphy.
Good evening, my name is Crystal Murphy, and I reside at 9522 Wheatfield Lane. I have a son that will be entering 6th grade, as well as a daughter entering 9th grade in the 21-22 school year. I'd like to thank the board on letting all of us voice the concerns of our children's education in these meetings. Of these concerns spoken before and after me, all are valid and truthful. In order to balance these concerns, you, the board, have set forth zoning objectives to guide the process. All of the objectives are to be given equal weight. Yet during the zoning process, some of the ABC hyper-focused on one single objective as their means to choose a map without considering all of the data, which is wrong and can harm the educational needs of many students within this district. Looking at the objectives, in regards to the diversity and economic disadvantages, compared to MAP 2, MAP 20 and 22 pull many economically disadvantaged and minority students out of George Ranch and moves them to already overcapacity Lamar, Terry, and soon to be Randall. This would leave George Ranch High School, a school with only 25% economically disadvantaged students, underutilized for the better part of a decade. MAP 2 burdens the fewest economically disadvantaged students with placement at an overcrowded school, even when offset by placement at an underutilized school. You cannot pile more economically disadvantaged students into a severely crowded school. MAP 2 makes sure that schools aren't being underutilized. In regards to rezoning, MAP 2 only allows 1,400 students to be rezoned, but with MAP 20, over 1,665 students would be rezoned, and with MAP 22, over 1,800. MAP 2 is rezoning less students. And going to the point that someone made earlier is that Foster and Fulshire could fill up 3 high schools alone and not relieve Lamar, hence why MAP 2 is needed to be chosen to keep more at George Ranch High School and to make sure that it is not underutilized. As far as traffic is concerned, MAP 2 reduces the travel burden and the cost on students significantly, with over 1,100 fewer miles traveled per day per student compared to MAP 20 and 22. And as far as the traffic goes, for the plan, when it's one planning unit, we're looking at all the planning units in consideration for all of that. With the feeder school tracking, as discussed earlier, only 419 students would be rezoned a second time, compared to more than 800 with MAP 20 and 22. And for some kids, they would be attending 6 schools in 6 years if you choose MAP 20 or 22. That is horribly taxing on the mental state of our students. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, MAP 2 and all the data supporting it provided to you matters.
Ma'am, your time's up.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Isaiah Felix.
Good evening, board members. My name is Isaiah Felix. My address is 8806 Lorraine Court. I just want to personally thank you for allowing me and everyone in the LCISD community to take this platform once again and have our voices heard. The fact that we're here today without a final vote on the high school rezoning boundaries speaks volumes to the delicate consideration of not moving forward with the ABC committee recommendation. From the last meeting, we had many speakers voice their position in favor of one map over the ABC recommendation. So MAP 2 was the best map, not in the end, but from the very beginning. The fact that this map was not chosen from the very beginning, to me, is mind-boggling, and the fact that MAP 20 was chosen with no data was even more bizarre. So now we're here with the livelihoods of many children at stake, and I have a responsibility myself as a public servant, as a pastor, as a father, as an advocate, to be a voice for everyone who's at home, working extra hours, or trying to figure out how to do homework on Zoom. As a pastor, I can tell you that I've not always been popular for the decisions that I've had to make, but I've always made the decisions considering others before myself. MAP 2 does just that. So once again, I plead with you to uphold your sworn commitment of impartiality as a board member and consider the best interests of all students and not any particular agenda. I'm aware that not everyone will be happy nor satisfied with the outcome, but we cannot ignore or turn attention away from the lack of accountability and the process that this committee came to the conclusion of this originally and heavily flawed recommendation. The data speaks for itself, and to accept this recommendation is to turn a blind eye in favor of a minority who does not have the best interest of representing the diversity, inclusion, and family that LCISD represents. This would draw extreme criticism from any independent third party or advocate. We love LCISD and trust the final decision made by you, the board, will be reflective of everything that entails LCISD, a proud tradition, a bright future. I thank you on behalf of myself, my community, and my family. Thank you.
Thank you. Naga Montilvo.
Good evening, board members. My name is Naimon Tiavo, and I am currently a junior at George Wrench High School. My address is 9530 Wheatfield Lane, and I am speaking here tonight as a student and for my community in reference to the zoning of Randall High School and Wright Junior High. The rezoning will not affect me directly since I will graduate from George Ranch in 2022. I understand the attendance boundary committee were provided with zoning objectives and/or criterias. The goal is to choose a map meeting the most objectives and keeping in mind what is in best interest of all students. I have looked at the maps and the data, therefore I believe map 2 meets most of the objectives LCISD is looking for. I have focused on objective 7, which is considers students' proximity to a campus. Being mindful of traffic patterns that allow for the safest routes available. Map 2 reduces the travel burden on students significantly with over 1,100 fewer miles traveled per day by LCISD students compared to the initial map 22 and the final map. Here is an example of an additional daily travel burden in miles in 2023. In map 2, you travel 621 miles. In map 2 modified, you travel 696 miles. In final map 22 modified, you travel 1,856 miles. Therefore, map 2 has the least traveled miles. I have traveled 762 when it was only 2 lanes, and let me tell you all, it was a nightmare. At first, I rode the bus, however, it was overcrowded with some students sitting 3 to a seat and even in the aisles. Then my parents started driving me to school, and we had to leave about 45 minutes before 8:15 to try to arrive on time for school. Another point to consider is the integrity of the asphalt roads, such as Benton, Rohan, Ricefield are nowhere close to county standards today because they were originally gravel roads. Asphalt layer placed on Benton Road last year already has been replaced due to the amount of traffic, and mind you, that is before that road is used for travel toward Randall High and Wright Junior High. Also, the acute left turn from Rohan onto 2977 presents additional hazards such as 1 car at a time on the bridge and no turn left signals. So therefore, I strongly emphasize for the board to consider map 2 as it checks off most of the objectives, poor LCISD zoning process, and safety to the students of the district. Thank you, board members, for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Christina Garcia.
Good evening. My name is Christina Garcia, and my address is 203 Denfield. I speak this evening as a parent of 3 children who attend LCISD schools, and a 4th that will join the LCISD family next fall. I also speak as an educator who taught for 12 years at Frost Elementary. I speak as a graduate of Terry High School. I speak as somebody who believes in the quality and rigor of the education provided by this district. This summer, I served as a member at the Attendance Boundary Committee for Randall High School. My group included an assistant principal of a Title I high school in HISD, a counselor who works with LCISD students, an ESL facilitator in the district, and 2 spouses of LCISD teachers. This group, filled with educators and advocates, made MAP 2. We took seriously the charge to balance the zoning objectives set forth by the district. We looked at how we could best utilize our facilities while striving to keep elementary schools intact and balancing diversity. One particular concern for our group was Terry High School. The starting map presented by the demographers underutilized George Ranch and Randall while overcrowding Lamar and Terry, schools with approximately 65% and 75% economically disadvantaged students. We also were concerned there was no guarantee that Lamar would get relief with the growth that's happening on the north side. This is fundamentally unfair to overcrowd our schools with a lower socioeconomics. We worked to create a map 2, that would slightly underutilize Terry so they could maximize funding that they receive for a group home and improve the educational resources for their students. Map 2 fulfills this goal while also keeping the most elementary schools intact with 4, balances the populations of the other campuses, and reduces the impacts to students who have been recently rezoned. At the public input meeting, not one resident expressed their support for Map 22, which only left 2 schools intact and met the least amount of zoning objectives. However, many spoke in favor of Map 2. This was reflected at the final committee meeting where Map 22 was voted down with a consensus of 67%. Map 2 modified would have been the recommendation map had voting ceased when a majority was reached at 56%. My group set out to develop a map that best meets the LCISD 12 zoning objectives over the next decade. Map 2 is a culmination of this effort. I urge the board to adopt this map as it best meets the needs of our LCISD students. Thank you for your time.
Danielle Ramal.
Hi, my name is Danielle Bramble and I reside at 9623 Harmony Lake Lane. I have been an educator for almost 10 years now. I have worked in a large suburban district, in a small rural district with very great need. I've worked at a blended learning school and a small private school. In all of this experience, I can tell you with absolute certainty that class sizes and overcrowded schools make a tremendous difference on the quality of education in our schools. I have been that teacher with students sitting in chairs instead of desks because every single one of my classes was over 35 students. I have had to look a parent in the eye and tell them I'm sorry I couldn't do more because I had over 250 students I was trying to teach. To provide students with opportunities is what we are here to do as a community. When we're considering the zoning maps, the final map presented by the ABC committee puts our brand new school over capacity in its first year after grandfathering. In the year 2023, it has 2,247 students at Lamar, 2,153 students at Randall, and only 1,807 students at George Ranch, with 1,714 students at Terry. How is it equitable to the students in our district to overcrowd our diverse, economically disadvantaged schools and leave the school with the lowest need underutilized? How is it equitable to send 370 students to a school that is not only farther away, but more crowded than the school closest to them? At the last board meeting, a common theme was a desire to include more diversity in Terry High School. Because of where our schools are built, the only way to provide better balanced diversity is to bus students across the district. In considering the initial Map 22 and comparing it to Map 2, Map 22 adds 130 students of diverse backgrounds to Terry, while also adding 139 economically disadvantaged students to an already astoundingly high number. Map 22 also removes 255 students of diverse backgrounds from George Ranch and 119 economically disadvantaged students, placing them at Terry and Randall. We have to do better for these students. The initial and final maps both remove 20% of the economically disadvantaged population from George Ranch and places them at other schools who already have twice, and in some cases 3 times as many economically disadvantaged students. The zoning process is one that causes emotions to run high, and it can often cloud our ability to think and make decisions rationally. That is why we have our 12 zoning principles, to help prevent bias from interfering with the goals of the district. There's no map that's perfect. But when you look at the data and you When you look at the data, it's clear that MAP 2 is the best map for our district. It doesn't place a single objective over any others, and it provides the most equitable academic experience for our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Hurst.
Hi, thank y'all for allowing input tonight. My name is Stephen Hurst. I live at 9418 Gingerstone Court. The zoning issue is a topic of great concern for my neighbors, my family, my kids, and their classmates and friends. My son is currently in the 7th grade at Reading Junior High School. He attends school with the same friends he's been going to school with since kindergarten. They participated in many activities such as scouting, recreational sports, school sports, and of course, classroom education. They formed close friendships in these times, and they want to continue their school journey together. They are genuinely concerned that they could be split apart. It was a heavy topic for them through the end of summer, and even more so when they were reunited to start this school year. My daughter, who is in the 2nd grade, is building friendships now at Carter Elementary. She has wonderful friends that she would like to continue having as classmates. The master plan principle number 6 was to minimize the alteration of high school zones. Keeping our Carter students together achieves this goal. It is my hope that you will agree that it is better for children to remain together. Keeping kids together throughout their education journey has proven to increase the likelihood that they will succeed in school. It keeps them excited to go to school, knowing they will be with their friends. You cannot replace these early childhood friendships that are formed early in their school journey. The capacity at George Ranch High School supports keeping these kids together. The kids are the reason I'm here, hoping that we can do what's right for them. Additionally, keeping these kids at George Ranch High School will be greatly beneficial to those who commute to work every morning as I do. Shifting traffic down Reading Road to make the very small left turn lane on 2977 is a recipe for a very long delay for everyone. All neighborhoods along Reading Road will be heavily impacted, bringing school traffic across Benton Road. Map 2 is a great map for the kids who have attended Carter and Parley Ryan, and also those who commute to the office. I hope you'll support it too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason Kalunga.
So my name is Jason Kalunga, and I am at 8415 Cloverleaf Drive, 77469. So I wanted to thank you for taking the time to decide not to vote last meeting. I do want to say map 2 that you've heard a lot about today is a lot better than the ABC map. So I'll start off by saying that. But my concern with map 2 is the economic disadvantage it places on Randall at 55%. My recommendation is to look at map 1, to Alex's point at the beginning of the meeting. It was a perfect map that the committee wanted to decide, hey, let's try to fix something, and it wasn't broken. It has the lowest economic disadvantage for Randall. It is the most tied to the LCISD, the most demographic population. It has a 40% economic disadvantage versus the 2.2 has a 55%. Map 2.2 is pulling kids from, more kids from Terry than it is from George Ranch High School. It also causes students to pass 3 highways, putting our kids at major risk, not just the small risk that you get from the side roads. When casting your vote on Thursday and when discussing your choices today, I would like you to keep those few things in mind. While Lamar might feel overcrowded, to Alex's point again, it should get relief in 4 years if the bond is approved. By doing this, it'll allow Kendleton to stay zoned to Lamar, allowing Randall to have a better representation of the communities by it. You've heard a lot about map 2 today, and it is a great map. It is better than the ABC recommendation. However, it does favor one community, and that is the concern that I have, because removing that community from Randall, there's some great parents in that community, and it can make Randall a great school, because their dedication, like you see them today, they're coming here, they're talking to you. That dedication is what we need at Randall. That dedication is what's going to allow Randall to be successful. Again, Map 1 was made with no other agenda except for giving this community a starting point, and it worked out. It was a great map. It was made by a third party, so no other agenda was in there. It was just, hey, third party, here you go. This is what we recommend. So please use your time for the next 2 days while you're thinking about this. Think about Map 1. Look at the economic disadvantage. You heard about economic disadvantage a lot when talked about Map 2.2. It has it at a 55% economic disadvantage at Randall. That is very high. There's nothing wrong with being a Title I school. At 40%, 45%, that's totally fine. At 55%, you start getting a stigma, and people do not want to go to this school, and you start getting bad parents out there. Use these 2.2 parents at Map 1, have them go to Randall, and have Randall be a good school. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all, Madam Chairman.
Dr. Randall, do we have any information items? Any questions on the information items?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
couple of questions. On the COVID return, the update. When the kids now that are being reported as having COVID, do you know if they're being tested for the flu also?
I don't believe so.
We really don't know what they're being tested for. That is
We're
strictly
not
a
testing.
parent decision, so we don't require the test.
Okay, so the ones that, we have one, a small amount, which is great, but what I'm wondering is, what is our requirement? Do they have to give us a doctor's note or something that they have been tested positive, and that stops? We don't question?
Yeah,
I guess it's called tracking.
Right, so I'll let Dr. Bowen talk about the return to school and work guidelines we have in place.
So the return to school guidelines for students that are being quarantined based to exposure is just a 14-day window. When their 14 days are up, they can return to school. For a student that's been a lab-confirmed case of positive, there's a couple of different options to return. Primarily, what we're looking at, though, is they have to be so many days symptom-free, so many days from exposure, and so many days fever-free without fever-reducing meds. Those are usually what we're using to return them.
Okay, I guess I'm talking about tracking. My question is, do we go to, like, why did they test positive? Do we backtrack, or are we allowed to ask?
We do.
If you have a family member, or are
We
we
ask-
keeping record of that?
We do. We ask what prompted the test, meaning some are just tested randomly. There are church events that prompt their testing, so there was no illness, there was no known exposure, and sometimes it's a known exposure. So we do ask what prompted the test, and then we do contact tracing only within the school district. We cannot do contact tracing for outside of school activities, but we do have to notify the county of each positive.
So everyone is being reported to the county?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. With the flu season, I have a big concern that we're not necessarily saying they are COVID. So is there any way that we ask them if they do the COVID test, or if they were tested for the flu at the same time? Are we able to do that?
We have not done so, and I don't know that we would really be in a position to do that, because that's not something. The flu is an illness that we've had in the past, and we don't ask them about testing for that. When we do send a child, when a nurse indicates that a child's not feeling well and we send a child home, we follow normal protocols. If it is up to their medical provider to determine whether or not that's an appropriate course of action.
Okay, that falls into another question. It was called to my attention. If a child is complaining of a stomach problem, a headache, runny eyes, and it's like an hour before school is out, are they allowed to stay in the classroom and sleep it off until they get ready to go home? Or should they be going to the nurse?
Our expectation would be that they would be sent to the nurse, and that the nurse would contact parents.
You don't want them taking the bus.
You don't want them taking the bus, exactly. Our expectation would be that they would be sent to the nurse, yes.
That should be the protocol to call, send them to the nurse?
Correct.
Not to deal with it, okay.
And there are places on campus where they can take and isolate those kids until parents come. and
That
pick
was
them
gonna
up.
be my other question. I didn't know if the teacher would have the option to let them sleep it off in their room, or did they have their own areas where they put their children if they're sick?
They've been directed to send them to the clinic, and as Dr. Randall mentioned, the clinic has protocols for, to separate them.
So they don't stay in the classroom?
Correct.
Okay. The food, the cafeteria, describe to me how they go to the cafeteria and pick up their food and then go back?
I'm gonna let Mr. Junty answer that.
Okay.
I can tell you about seating charts in the cafeteria, but he's gonna tell you about food delivery.
But actually, Monica's on her way.
Okay.
She's on the road.
Well, good, we get to see Monica.
So they go through the line, they pick up their meal, and they either go into the cafeteria or another space within the school. So if their enrollment is higher and they just choose to eat in the classroom, then some students go to the classroom. But they all go through the serving line and pick up their food.
Okay, so if a child gets sick in the cafeteria?
Then I would say they would get sent to the nurse.
Okay, well, it's worse than that. They throw up in the cafeteria. So I was what I'm trying to figure out is the protocol that, because it did happen.
Okay.
If a child going through the line, I was under the impression that the children were being fed in the classrooms.
No.
And so undoubtedly that's not true.
No.
So a child goes in and throws up, simply. Then what do you do for the rest of the time for those students that haven't eaten yet?
We already have existing protocols for when a student is ill, and our cafeteria and also our custodial staff is trained in how to take care of bodily fluids. So
Right.
we would follow those same protocols.
But the students, would they be allowed to go into that room before it's taken care of? Or did we then have to switch and they all have to eat in their rooms that day?
That's gonna be it.
So you said what I heard you say was if a student was ill in the cafeteria, correct? We would have our custodians respond, follow their normal protocols to clean that area, disinfect it, and sanitize it before any student or staff was allowed to go through. And we do that all the time. So once that area was appropriately disinfected, then we would reopen that line.
You could reopen it?
Yes.
And then sack lunches. Are the kids allowed to bring their own lunches in?
Yes.
And do they eat them in their classrooms or in the cafeteria? In the cafeteria.
Per our reopening guidelines, the cafeteria the cafeteria standard was 50% of capacity. And that's what Monica's team got together with all of our campus principals and staffs and set up those cafeterias in a way that's 50%. Once a campus exceeds 50% of their students face-to-face, they may have to pivot and have students eat in classrooms or other areas.
Do you anticipate that when we have more kids coming back in? I really do expect a lot more to come back in 9 weeks.
I also would like to add that the campuses have also structured their lunch periods and their lunch times.
Dr. Bowen.
Thank you, Dr. Sorry. The campuses have structured their lunch periods to accommodate that as well, to accommodate more students, so they've spread them out longer in the day.
And added
To
lunch
ensure-
periods, yeah.
Right, to ensure
Yeah,
that they can get when our numbers increase on campus, they can still accommodate them in the cafeteria.
Okay, and that's the reason for the early lunch.
That's correct. There may be more lunch periods. I've actually been out on the campuses and seen the way that the campus has structured the lunch periods to put fewer students in more lunch periods and space them out, and they're doing a great job.
Okay.
So we're saying that, and this is news to me tonight, that there's not students eating their lunch in their classrooms. We have
There
it
are
spaced out on.
Some might.
There could be
There
at
could
some
be some
point.
on
once
some
we-
campuses.
Once we max out at over 50% of the capacity, that's
Okay.
correct. It is considered an overflow area that we could utilize, would be the classroom. Our goal is whenever possible to have students eat in the cafeteria.
I'm sure that's just a campus by campus decision.
I brought it up because I'm also concerned about the social times that the kids actually get a break from their classrooms, that they are allowed to
Yes.
socialize to some degree.
They do go to the
in
cafeteria.
that
And I can tell you that as they go through the cafeteria lines, they're able to do that fairly quickly, the way that Monica's group has set up. They do prepackaged lunches, but those are hot lunches that they go through. They scan their IDs, and it's a well-oiled machine. And then we also disinfect all of that area and the tables between each lunch.
Okay, that's good. Okay. And I have one last question, if anybody else has something else. This is about the athletic situation. About the fans, I just read it in the Herald Coaster today, so I think I had a lot of my questions answered, but I've had the opportunity to attend smaller schools' football games.
Yes, ma'am.
And they've worked out very well, but the issue is tickets. And could you explain a little bit about your interpretation of the UIL mandate?
Yes, ma'am. The UIL mandate to us is that we cannot exceed 50% capacity at any of our facilities. And they've also asked us to close every other row of bleachers and account for seats to be 6 feet apart between family groups at this point. So we've gone out and marked all of our facilities that way. Our junior high, the large gyms at our junior highs where our junior high volleyball teams compete, as well as both gyms at our high school. Because we do sometimes play our freshman games in the smaller gym and our large competition gyms at our high schools. We've also marked all of our high school stadiums, and we are in the process of marking the bleachers at our tennis courts because those are the sports we have in season right now. And once we marked them, we counted the seats that were available at all those facilities so that we would know what our capacity was at each of those. Then we compared that with the number of students we had at all of our schools, junior highs and high schools in those sports, before we crafted our ticketing plan. And then that's how we crafted our ticketing plan. Our goal was to ensure that the participants in each of our activities had the first opportunity to have fans at those activities. When we started to compare our capacity at our junior high gyms and the stadiums that our junior high football teams play at, is when we started to see that we were really going to be pushing some of those capacities. I didn't want to create a situation where the first people who were at the venue had the opportunity to buy the tickets, and if a parent arrived late because they were coming from work, because they were coming from providing childcare to the rest of their family, because they were coming from traffic, etc., they got to the game and did not have the opportunity to buy a ticket. So instead what we've done is each of our junior high athletes receives one ticket ahead of time so that they can give that to their parent. Parent can take it to work, parent can take it when they go pick up their other children in their family, etc. Then when they arrive at the game, they're able to cash that ticket in. They pay for the ticket when they use it, but they can only come in with a ticket. That way we know ahead of time, they know they have a guaranteed seat, and we know how many tickets that we've given out so that we can control our crowd sizes.
Now this is at the junior high level?
We've also done that with high school volleyball. We've used the same format. Obviously our high school gymnasiums are a little bit bigger. So in those situations, we've been able to give our high school volleyball athletes sometimes 2 tickets. We are currently only seating fans from within LCISD. So for example, if Lamar High School plays Terry High School in volleyball, we would give half the available seats in the gymnasium to Lamar and half the available seats in the gymnasium to Terry. If Lamar High School was perhaps playing a Fort Bend school, Lamar High School would have all the available seats in the gymnasium. And in turn, our fans are not going to Fort Bend or to any other school district for that matter. And it's a multifaceted approach, but the goal is that our fans are not traveling to other municipalities, and those fans from those municipalities are not traveling here. It's a safety measure to some extent. It also allows us to have extra fans at those games because we have all of those seats. We are also, for our stadium games, following the same measure for football, for junior high football, 7th grade, 8th grade, as well as sub-varsity. It's the same stadium. We use the same stadium for 9th grade, sophomore, and JV football. For varsity football, we are going to send out a link to varsity football parents on Sunday. We will make an allotment of tickets available online so that each of them can purchase up to 2 if they're interested, so that they can buy, parents can buy 2 tickets to the varsity football game that's coming that week. Then on Monday, we'll send out a link to the drill team, cheerleading, and band parents so that they have the opportunity to buy tickets. If there are tickets remaining on Tuesday morning, we'll make them available to the public. Again, we've prioritized the parents of our participants so that they have the first opportunity to attend those events. We have installed our streaming camera at Traylor Stadium, so we'll be able to stream those events live online to anyone who doesn't get to attend the event. We also have the capacity to stream events from our high school competition gymnasiums and our natatorium. And that's something that we put in an effort to try to help us get through these limited capacity events.
It's a good plan.
Is it the same thing with the varsity games, that if we're not playing a team in our district, that we could use both sides of the stadium, or?
We have not taken that measure with outdoor sporting events.
Okay.
So we have split our stadiums outside. They've got larger capacity and we're able to split the crowd on two sides.
Okay, so if you have two teams in the district, they'll all get the same?
That's correct. So if,
That's good.
same example, if Lamar and Terry are playing at Traylor Stadium, each of them will get half of the stadium. If Lamar is playing a Fort Bend team, Lamar will have the home side, which is larger, and the Fort Bend team would have the visiting side. And we will be allowed to travel there for varsity contests, for football, varsity football.
How about, but not the band and the drill team, is that what I read, or?
Yeah, no band.
Our band and drill teams are not traveling to a away varsity football contest at this time. We may make an update to that policy, but
Okay.
currently they are not.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. All right.
Somebody emailed me, and this got on my radar because some parents were upset about the one ticket for the, no, I want to ask about middle school and, junior high, outdoor specifically. I didn't know about that policy. Some people said, why did you make such a bad policy? And I said, the board did not. The administration did, but I'm trying to understand their thinking. My children play league soccer that's not Lamar related. Every week we go to a different outdoor field somewhere in the Houston area. And a bunch of us parents just get our lawn chairs and we just find a shady spot and we just plop down and watch the game. So for the parents out there who are mad about the one ticket per family policy, outdoor, help them understand why we cannot let them bring their lawn chair and spread out, maybe not on the spectator side, but far away from the end zone or somewhere else, just to watch their student or their athlete play.
Sure. One of the charges that UIL has given us as well is to ensure that we provide an entry and an exit path for all of our participants, athletes at the junior high level, our athletes and our coaches, that keeps them separated from the fans. We are not screening our fans individually the way that our students are screened each day, and that our coaches and our trainers are screened each day. We are inviting these fans in to attend the games. I think it's important to remember that our athletic fans, we hosted junior high volleyball. It was our first event last week. And those are the first visitors that have returned to our campuses since last March. And that's great, and I think it's wonderful. And my hope, I will be very happy to offer them more tickets just as quickly as I can. The same thing is true in football. We'll be able to invite these folks in to watch their children participate. But we have to keep a division between where they're able to sit and where the athletes are going to be sitting. We play two junior high football games a night. When they're not playing, if it's before their game or after their game, a lot of times they use the end zone space to warm up or to hold their teams before they load them back on the bus or to release them. While it looks like a lot of space within that track perimeter or within that fence perimeter, there are a lot of things that take place in that space with our students moving around, moving from one side to the other. We don't have the space that we need to be able to open that up to parents, especially not to ensure that they are still maintaining those guidelines of 6 feet between houses and making sure that our students aren't exposed to parents who may not be their parents or families that are not their parents. So we've tried to set up a system. It's coming across as one ticket per family, and what we've tried to do is ensure that every participant has at least one fan present.
What is the typical capacity for a junior high football stadium?
Each of ours is a little bit different, and so that's part of the challenge here as well, is that we've had to create a policy so that whether you play for the 7th grade or the 8th grade team, whether you are home or away, we have some consistency. so that we're not having to say to a parent, last week you played at home, this week you play away, and the rule is different. I can tell you that our stadiums, Lamar Junior High happens to play at Traylor Stadium. So obviously it has a much larger capacity. Our smallest is 104 seats following these COVID mitigation guidelines. And we currently have 7th grade and 8th grade teams that range in size from around 38 to 100 participants. And we're trying to mitigate that with our available seats.
The one, I'm still, the one ticket per family. They get the one ticket, but they have to wait then the following day to whatever tickets remain, they can go in and purchase more?
No, ma'am, for junior high and sub-varsity football, they have one guaranteed ticket and that's it at the sub-varsity level. At the varsity level, participants will have the opportunity to purchase 2 tickets during the pre-sale period. If there are tickets remaining, they will go open and available to the public on Tuesdays.
After the band
And drill team, cheerleading, and football players have had an opportunity to purchase them. But that's just for varsity football because it's played at our larger stadium.
We gotta get rid of this. Let's go.
Yes, ma'am, I agree with you 100%.
Because I also had the experience with UIL about the masks. You must come in wearing a mask at all times. We had a little issue about monitoring that. Is that going to be our own police force that would be doing that? Or will we be using?
Staff, I like staff.
Will they be the ones coming in and monitoring that everybody's coming in and following the rules?
I would say everybody. If I walk past someone and they don't have a mask on, they're supposed to have a mask on, I'm gonna ask them, would you please put your mask on? You only have one ticket, hopefully you don't lose the opportunity to be at a game because you won't wear your mask and meet the requirements. But then you have all of your administrators that are on duty that are responsible as well. And we hope that we don't have to have our police engaged in any of that at all. Hopefully our ticket takers, everybody that's involved will be encouraging. Now that's the one thing that I can truthfully say that our district has done well. And what we've got to be real careful of is to start backing away from the plan that we have in place. Because when you go out and you look on the new website, whatever the dashboard, we're in pretty good shape. But that's not because we're just lucky. I really and truly do believe that everyone is indeed following those guidelines. And we hate to have one person or tickets for one individual. Lord, we'd love to fill the stadiums up. But right now, we've got to stay true to what we've been working with. So whatever the guidelines are for the stadium, now Nikki is running trailer, so I don't have to worry about anything over there. She'll be out there running around with everybody, making sure that they've got their mask on. But on all the junior high school locations and the other places as well, administrators and the folks on duty will be asking them to follow those guidelines.
And are we only streaming the varsity football game, or are we streaming anything else?
We will stream anything played at the stadium. So if there are junior high football games played at the stadium, we will stream those.
But as long as it's at the
Sub-varsity,
stadium,
yes, ma'am.
okay.
That's where we have that's the outdoor stadium we have the capacity at. We will stream anything played in our high school competition gyms. We will stream any swimming event at our natatorium. And we have scheduled our junior high playoffs, as we call them, when our teams who advance. We've scheduled those here at the stadium and also in our high school competition gyms because it will give us the chance, if nothing else, to give those junior high parents added opportunity to bring extra fans to those games if we don't have the ability to do it during the regular season.
And where will they find that link? On our website on the
On the
day of the game?
LCISD athletics page, if you click the tickets tab, you'll find all the up-to-date information on ticketing information as well as the COVID mitigation guidelines.
As well as where they can watch the streamed version.
Yes, sir, for each campus.
For each
And we just need to make sure we have that information out there so the parents know how to get
it to the public, yeah, 'cause
Yes, the Fort Bend Herald wrote a great article about it
I
today,
just
put
saw
it out,
today,
and we're
but
following it up with a social media
it's a
campaign.
little harder with it being mailed in like that.
Yes,
Get it
ma'am.
out to the public that far.
All right, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Good job.
Thank you.
If there aren't any additional questions, Madam Chairman, those are all of the information items.
We don't have do we have closed session?
We do not this evening.
Okay. If we have no further business, then the meeting is adjourned. It is 8:29 PM.
Bang us.